Hey, everybody, welcome to the Wheels Off podcast. This is episode 13 and the fourth installment of Behind the Clipboard. Today, we've got one of everybody's favorite newest admins, if I remember right, Baba Yaga, or AKA Mason Asher. Mason, thanks for doing this. I do kind of always have a little bit of an intro question for people. So what is it that you do? And more importantly, why is it you think it's important for you to do it?
Yeah. So first off, thanks for having me. I've been a big, long-time follower of the podcast. And once I saw you start interviewing people that were within the sim, it kind of always piqued my interest. And then obviously you put that post in Discord a couple days ago or yesterday. And I immediately within 5 minutes was like, hey man, I'm on. You can do Saturday. And then, so again, thanks to that. Yeah. Like in real life, I do a lot of different stuff. I work in girls basketball. So my main things are I run a content website. So I go out to high school basketball games, AU tournaments in the summer, and stuff like that, and write about the players. It's a subscription-based model. The parents, the coaches, the players subscribe to that on a monthly basis. I kind of to read my thoughts, and like my scouting reports and stuff. So that's probably my main thing right now. I also do recruiting consulting. So I work with about 20 different families and kind of guiding them through the recruiting process. And then I also run a scouting service. So I partnered with a guy from Michigan and we work with about 400 schools across the country. We have a database of about 7,000 kids. And so the schools pay us for that information, just because it's easy access for them, because they're always looking for players' academic information, contact information, and then like a little evaluation on them, just because, college coaches only have so many hours in the day to go out and recruit. So having two people that they trust help them with that is something that, they like to take advantage of quite a bit. And I'm starting to get back into the event space. So once I got out of college, my first job was I was a national events director for a big basketball events company. I quit that to start my own stuff. So I work for myself, which is awesome now. I'm very, very, very lucky. But myself and a guy are partnering, and we're going to start an event company. And we're going to run probably 20 events this next summer across the Midwest. So I'm excited to get back into that too. Should be fun and interesting.
Awesome. That's good because there's so many different walks of life people walk into this thing. So I guess kind of how we look at this is what really got you into the idea of doing what you're doing in the real world. As Pierce like to say, we're real people talking about fake sports, but we're talking about a real sports thing with a real person. Yeah. How did you decide to get into this?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story. I think like all of us, we've all kind of been into sports for probably most of our lives. My first job in high school was I actually worked for our local newspaper when I was 16, going to games and, writing the game stories for those. So I did that for 2 years for a couple different newspapers. And then when I went off to college, I was more on social media in college than I was in high school. Just because social media was evolving. Like I was in high school kind of right when Twitter came about. And when I got to college, it kind of was starting to more so take off in like 2014 to 2018. And so I was doing newspaper stuff, saw some scouting stuff online. And really the only reason that I was interested in it was because they had player rankings. And since I was doing, high school games for newspapers, I was like, you know what, I kind of want to like know who is ranked where, kind of similar to college, recruiting rankings. And so I messaged the guy and asked him if I could come just, shadow him for one of his games he was covering. And so I went to a tournament with him and it kind of took off from there. So I actually started on the boys side doing boys scouting stuff, started girls stuff in 2018. And the funniest part was I never thought I'd ever be working in girls basketball or girls athletics in any way, because the college I went to was an all-male college, one of only two left in the country. And so, that was kind of a little different because, it's so, like, it wasn't in a bad way, but you just wouldn't have any interactions with girls that much except on the weekends. Like on the weekends, you couldn't tell it was, a male-only college. But then to work with really now only females, it's kind of funny to me just looking back at how that whole dynamic was. But the reason I'm doing it now is just because, it makes an impact in these, not only the girls, but also their families' lives. I see that a lot. If I write about a kid and, they'll screenshot and post it on social media. And, later on, they'll say, oh, college coach sent me my tweet that I included your write-up in, and, now I have a visit on my campus. And I think, that stuff really probably would have happened regardless. But it's cool to think that I, had some hand of making an impact. And obviously, I see it a lot more now with the families I help recruiting and consulting with them, just because that's more of a hands-on approach. I'm actually like helping them through all steps of the recruiting process and guiding them. So that's, I think, where I see the most, positive adverse effect for them.
Right. So do you see that real life knowledge and experience helping you in the sim in any way when it comes to evaluating players and stuff? Or
I would say probably not. Maybe in some ways that I'm not thinking of, but I think that, especially like in recruiting for both sims, like I think it's so like you don't really know what each player is. Like you obviously can't see the underlying attributes for the players. And so I think you just kind of see the surface level of every player before you recruit them. And there's not really any differentiators, especially since like their hometowns and their heights and weights, and that stuff doesn't really come into play for recruiting. I'm sure subconsciously there might be, but I don't think that I think there is, but there could be.
right. I know with the player cards, there's a personality section
Mm-hmm.
and academics and discipline. From my point of view, playing sims, I've done football sims for close to 20 years now. How much of that does it, I mean, like you said, unconscious bias, like Wisconsin, I'd go through the academics. If they didn't sit at the front of the class and they were always in the principal's office for academic reasons, I didn't recruit them, which means I missed out on some serious 5-star players sometimes because now they're basket cases usually, which is pretty true in real life to some extent. Having put college players into college from my high school coaching side, how much, do you see that as something that could be expanded upon in the sim as being valuable versus just being dressing right now?
Yeah, and I think that stuff is being, if I'm understanding correctly, that stuff is being more taken in more now as not just dressing. I think it has something to do with the probability of transferring, but I could be wrong there. But I think that would be a fun element. I think it's kind of a fine line, because if you have someone, like you said, who's a basket head, like I think it would be cool to have them, kind of like the boomer bust mechanic. Like
Mhm.
you could have them, go off the rails and get suspended for 4 games just as a dice roll, or, you know, decide to transfer out of the blue. And, we see that in college football now. Guy just transferred like out of the blue. I
Right.
think everyone was surprised. Now, I think everyone would agree that it probably didn't hurt them too bad with how they played the last 2 games. But something like that I think would be cool, just as a personality trait that is more than just, a word on the screen. I think having those be, like you said, a little bit more dynamic would be interesting. But again, I don't want to get too deep into that, just because I wouldn't want, someone to decide to transfer who's a 5-star all of a sudden, because in that, kind of, if someone puts so many resources in to, recruit that player and get them on their team, and it's a big part of their team, it also, in the end, is a simulation game that's just fun for all of us.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't want that guy to just, up and transfer out of the book.
Well, let's look at real life. Let's look at Dante Moore, originally committed to Oregon, flips to UCLA. Then what's he do in transfer portal? He goes back to Oregon
Yeah.
to sit behind Dylan Gabriel this year, knowing that
Right.
he may next year be the number one, but all those recruits that they did for quarterbacks as well are going, hey, where's our shot?
Right.
I think it would be kind of interesting, is like one of the things that catches my attention that's always a red flag for me is the word skips leg day. It would be funny from a simulation point. Is like, yeah, you get injured, but they have more of a they're strong, but they have more of a propensity for lower body injuries or something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's, there's, I think, a lot of different ways you can go with it. I think there are an unlimited number of personalities and traits and that stuff that you could even just throw in that's not in there yet. Job of brain, they do a good job of brainstorming that stuff too. So
Yeah, I just think it's kind of a cool thing. It's neat for flavor, but I'd like, and I know just being around Rocket and Pierce and some of these other guys and Tuscan, that eventually that stuff's going to come into place somehow, like you said, whether it's the transfer portal or it's an injury or gameplay or what, or in the recruiting process. So you're involved in the college side, both football and basketball. You're in pro football and basketball, and you're also in the pro baseball, from what I read. So what? How does your philosophy of building your sims, play into how, kind of between football and basketball and baseball? How does this all kind of play out as Baba Yaga would look at it?
Yeah. So in college football, obviously that was the first thing, the first sport that was in the sim. I was dealt with an okay roster, not great roster. I had some studs in the senior class. I had a good first year. I didn't have a good recruiting year. At that point, I still didn't really know what I was doing in recruiting. And so I think I had like 4, maybe 5 blue chips that first year. And I really focused on potential. Potential for like even 2 stars and 3 stars. And looking back at it, I don't think that was the way. I mean, that's not the way I recruit anymore. But so that second year was not very good. That third year was a little bit better, but still not very good. But off of that first recruiting class that I got, that was a good class. That's when I started really putting my scheme together of, okay, this is what I'm going to look for. Just because those first 2, I think, like everyone has really said, that first year, you kind of have to just play whatever scheme you're dealt, essentially. And then obviously the schemes did expand too. So you had a little bit more variability in what others were running, what you could run. You had a little bit more of the ability to fit your players to a certain scheme for the most part. But I think once that first recruiting class for me, especially defensively, where I got those 2 5-star defensive ends and then a 4-star defensive tackle, like that kind of really said, hey, I'm going to be playing some type of 3-4 because I've got my defensive lineman here. This is what I'm going to run with, which is funny because I actually run 4-4. I did last year with 2 nose tackles and it went really well. I stopped the run really well. But this year I'll probably switch to a 3-4 just so that, I have a bonus with the nose tackle instead of, no scheme bonus.
Right.
And then in my linebackers and cornerbacks, I always play zone. I think I do that because when I play football games, I think the man coverage is terrible on, Xbox or whatever. So I've always just played zone. So I think that's kind of why I only played zone. I don't know if one's better or one's worse than the other, but that's just what I was generated with a couple really good zone safeties too. It's like, and they've been my starters all 4 years. So like, that's kind of a given for me already back there. And then offensively, like, I don't know. I still don't really have like a scheme that I'm going to run. I have no clue. That first year, it was obviously throw it to Devontae McKinney as many times as you possibly could, as far downfield as you possibly could.
Yeah, that's a name that haunts me to this day.
It haunts a lot of people, I think. I'm still trying to get them in smack on the Steelers. But yeah, I think that first year, I don't remember what I ran. I think it was just turn up the sliders as much as possible and throw deep to him as much as possible. The second year and third year, I didn't have a quarterback that was any good. So I was really bad. I think one year, I can't remember if it was second year or third year, I do scrambling quarterbacks. And I started one for 5 games or 4 games and started one the rest of the year. And it was just not good. I think I threw 5 touchdowns to 6 picks that year. It was not fun, but it was fun trying to get it all to work. It just wasn't, it didn't work. It wasn't good. I don't know you could have done anything. And then last year, I was about what I thought I would be. I had pretty good defense. Quarterback was pretty solid. But now this year, I'm in an identity crisis on the offense side of the field because I had, as Sage says, one of the best 2 prospects in the game. the best running back in the game, but I also have a quarterback issue where
Right.
should I start Laxo, who's probably not as good as my other quarterback, Kyle Kane, who I recruited, or should I start Kyle Kane? Because I always have had a, kind of a philosophy of put your best players on the field. In the past couple of years, it has been, I've had a very this is your best player at this position and he's playing.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't been like, oh, here's a senior who's a B and here's a, a redshirt sophomore that's a B. And one's better than the other, but one's only going to be here for one more year and the other one's going to be here for 3 years. So I think it's helped in the portal a little bit too so far, especially on the offensive side of the field for me. I mean, I've gotten more defensive guys than offensive guys. And my wide receiver room was terrible 2 years ago, like really, really bad, where I was playing a running back at wide receiver one. It was that bad.
Right.
And I think I've been, obviously pretty vocal about it in chat. Like, I'm very happy with how I've turned that wide receiver room around, where now I've got 9B in there or better.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't think it's probably good enough to be able to have that be a weapon. I think it will be in 2 years or maybe next year, but I don't think it's the point now where, I don't have 3 A's. I didn't have any A's actually in the wide receiving room until I got a transfer wide receiver this last week. So I think that, and I think too, I think the wide receivers make the quarterback in some way too. You don't have wide receivers, but your quarterback's great. I don't think he's going to play well. And if you have an okay quarterback, but really good wide receivers, I think your quarterback is going to be pretty good. So I think that's my whole philosophy of, okay, if I want to be good, I need to have good wide receivers. And so getting one in the portal, who's an A-, who can catch the ball, because no one else in my team have better than deep catching, it's going to help me for whoever quarterback I choose. I honestly still haven't figured out or chose who I want to play, because Kyle Kane has a throw power and throw accuracy, but Helen Keller, as I like to call him, is not a good thrower. And so my worry is, I have a higher floor and a higher ceiling with Kane, but just playing him instead of Laxo for year 3 and 4, because I don't really have another quarterback next year that I can turn to. So I think it's going to be a spring game call, because like I said, I want to win every game. I don't want to win every game, but I want to attempt to win every game. So I want to roll with who's going to give me the best chance to win those games. And then, the next year just kind of figure out from there. And obviously, as we saw too, there's a lot of good quarterbacks that go in the portal too. So if it's something where, next year, this year I have to recruit a quarterback, and then next year I have to, either start at not as good of a quarterback or, go in the portal and grab a quarterback, I'm fine with doing that too. Because, there are a couple really solid, even B overall quarterbacks, so good throwing stats.
Right. So I guess looking at this, I mean, we've talked about Purdue, obviously, because when I came into Wisconsin year 2, you were very run heavy because, like you said, you didn't have the pieces. And in fact, year 3, I think you were very run heavy. I think year 3 is when you beat me. I beat you year 2, close game. Year 3, you beat me. Mm-hmm. How does that philosophy play over into the Texans? Do you carry that from team to team, or do you kind of separate the two philosophically?
Yeah, so I think I'd like to run similar on both college football and at Houston. So my whole thought process through the NFL was essentially, I think we're going to year 4 now of NFL, or year 3? Year 4.
I think we're year 4 now.
Yeah, so my first 2 years, I wanted to be very light on signing players. I didn't want to get into bad contracts. I wasn't quite sure how the attributes would play, which attributes would be more important, which attributes would be less important. So the first 2 years, I just kind of wanted to sit that out and just kind of see how things turn. And then last year, I was going to be more active in free agency, but my GM left, and he was in charge of signing all the free agents and stuff. I was kind of, during that point, was a really busy time for my work stuff in the summer. And so I kind of said, here you go, you can sign who you want. Just make sure like you're not an idiot
Right.
and sign a huge contract. Then he left like in the beginning of the off season and didn't actually say anything to me. And so I got to like the preseason and I'm sitting here with like 40 players. I was like,
Right.
okay, well, I gotta sign all the best free agents left and try to compete. So like I wasn't ever trying to tank. It just happened that my team was very good. And even like my worst team, I think I still ended up with a pick. So like it's kind of fun in that aspect looking back. But now, I'm really trying to build around Hiram. Like if there's a quarterback there that makes sense for me at number 3, I'll probably end up taking quarterback. But I'd like to see if Hiram can actually play. And so for me, that starts with obviously I've made trades for 372 plus or 71 plus overall wide receivers already this year. I've got Raider now as a stalwart in my offensive line. My offensive line I thought was already pretty solid in terms of having a couple 2 and 3 year players who, were in the mid 60s.
Right.
Which, mid 60s isn't great, but their blocking attributes were pretty good. But when a guy like Raider comes up as a 79 in his, 3rd or 4th year, and you get him, for what I got him for, a backup offensive guard, and then like a 6th round pick or 5th round pick, whatever it was, like you kind of have to, you kind of have to pull that trigger. And obviously he's going to cost a lot next year, but I've got 130 something million in cap space for next year. So that's not going to be a problem. So for me, I'm trying to it's not necessarily a scheme that I'm trying to build necessarily an offense. I'm just trying to build the best players around him and then probably pick a scheme that highlights the players who that. Obviously with Ryan Johnson and Hiram being a scrambler, like I'm always going to probably run the ball more. But last year, like he just didn't have any weapons to throw it to. So that's one of the main things that I am trying to, fix this year, giving him some wide receivers. Because going back to what I said, about the quarterback in college football, like you have to have wide receivers or your quarterback's not being good. And last year, when you're throwing to 177 overall wide receiver and the rest being 60 and 59 to 58, like there's just no way he's going to be good. Also, I don't think he's very good anyway because he's got like 59 throw power and 66 accuracy, which is terrible.
Right.
But I also spent a 1st round pick on him, so I kind of have to see what he's got if I want any chance of him being successful. And who knows, he might be okay this year and I might be able to sign him for a couple more years, but that's just something I want to see about first. Defensively, it's the same as college football, really. I want to run one of the spread stopper defenses because everyone likes to pass the ball. I'll probably change based on if I have more inside linebackers, or better inside linebackers versus better defensive linemen.
Right.
Still running zone. I think I've got a really nice secondary that's young that I drafted. They all are 85 zone coverage or above. So that's something where I'm not really looking to improve much just because I have so much improvement to do, both in the wide receiver room and then on the defensive, the front seven, really. I traded most of those guys away. I released, or some of them went to free agency. So I'm sitting with 2 guys who I drafted, outside linebacker, maybe a couple inside linebackers, and then I don't have any defensive ends on the roster right now.
Right.
But I think, I was talking about this with someone else a couple days ago. I think it's a lot easier to scheme if you don't have talent on the defensive side of the ball. Or I think on the offensive side of the ball, you have to have talent, and the scheme doesn't necessarily matter as much. The last year, I didn't have that good of a defense, but statistically, my defense was pretty good. It was top 5 in yards allowed. Of course, I ran the ball a lot, so that plays into it where the other team didn't get the ball that much. But but on the whole, yeah, I kind of wanted to run that 3-4, 4-4 spread stopper like I do with Purdue. So we'll see how that goes.
So just looking at the draft book, obviously, you got Josh Bacon, outside linebacker from Mizzou. You've got Weston Shackelford from Bama, inside linebacker, top 6 on according to the book here. Bacon being at 1, then you got 3 running backs. You got Bo Oaf from Auburn, who's a field general. I'm not sure if he fits in with that scheme or not. I don't think he does. But you got some defensively or offensively. Are you looking for more weapons for Hiram? Are you looking, like you said, quarterback there? Are you going to Josh Rosen him and pick another quarterback? Go pick a Kyler Murray type player. You got Monty, you got Neville out there. You've got a whole host of people out there. Quarterback wise, I mean, for Isaiah Lewis is out there, but he's another scrambler. I'm not sure if he'd fit that concept, but I mean, somebody like a Will Outman, Julian Longacre are out there. Are you looking more for a scheme fit because you know your defense better than you know your offense? Or are you trying to create opportunities for your quarterback?
I think so my philosophy in the draft is in the first 3 rounds, I try to just pick the best player. Like, I don't really care what their, archetype is. Unless it's not a scheme fit, then I'll care. But so like if it's a field general versus a run stopper, like run stopper does not fit and the spread stopper. But field general is just a flat, no malice, no bonus. So like those guys I would select. But in terms of what I'm looking to do, so this is basically my draft strategy for this year. It's with number 3, inside number 3. I think Baylor's quarterback's going to go 1 or 2. I would be shocked if he goes past 1. Like, he's the best player in the draft by far, in my opinion. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be really, really good. Right? I've scouted him. I think he's going to be an instant impact guy. Like, I would trade up multiple future picks to get him, and that's just going from 3 to 1. But I don't, in my position where I'm at right now, I don't to do that. Like, I don't want to do that. I value those future picks a little bit more than I think most would. Obviously, if you see some of the trades that go on, because everyone values stuff differently. My goal in the draft probably is to move back to probably the mid first round, and then add maybe another pick this draft and next draft. But obviously, like, that's going to be subjective to if there's any players there at number 3 that people want to move up to number 3 for. But if not, I'm probably going to end up drafting defense. I know who I'll draft. I don't want to spill it, just in case someone moves up to 2. Actually, no. I already asked them. I'm going to... should I tell people? No.
It's your call. It's really up to you. I mean, everybody's got their own draft things, and the other person may go, hey, I don't want people to know. So, I mean, that's something that maybe we can discuss it later.
So there's 2 guys I'd pick it 2, or pick it 3. I know I have a very good feeling of who's going to be picked at 2 because I asked them to move back. So I'm probably going to end up picking the Bo O guy, the inside linebacker, if I don't move back. He's really good. He's not as good. There's another inside linebacker who's an A on the draft board that I've scouted who's actually much, much better, but he's not a scheme fit. And he's got like a deep potential. That's an A guy who's not a scheme fit. But he's got a deep potential. But his like overall stats that you can reveal are across the board better than the Bo O guy. But the Bo O guy has an A potential. So if someone hops in front of me to pick him, I have some holes to fill. It doesn't really matter. Right. But I also have like 1 inside linebacker on the roster. So that's why I'm going to go inside linebacker. Unless I move back, which is still obviously a potentiality. But that's kind of my thought process around the draft process. I want to pick the best players available at those picks just because the Texans need such an influx of talent. Now if I was 11-6 last year and had, 1 opening or 1 position I need to fill on the defensive side and offensive side, like I would probably go more towards scheme fit. But now I'm just trying to get obviously as much talent in as possible. So for me, it's just pick the best players available and make them fit how they fit.
So you have 9 picks this year. Is that going to play into how you approach specifically the middle part of the draft? Because that seems to be the make or break for most teams. There are 3rd and 4th round talents that do play. And then occasionally you'll find a gem in like the 6th or 7th. It's like I found Brandon Alexander at the 2nd to last pick last year, totally by accident. I'd reached out and talked to Poopy and he's like, hey, you should look at this guy. and no, he's an A+ potential, and he's actually improving. Is he Brock Purdy? I don't know. Do having a large number of picks and future picks give you a little bit of a different mindset versus just having your straight number or even less picks? How would that affect how you approach this draft?
I think it doesn't necessarily approach it any differently, just because I think if I had 5 picks versus 9 picks versus 14 picks, I think I'd still try to approach it in the same way as I was trying to stockpile talent as much as possible. Most of my picks this year, in the first 105 picks,
Mm-hmm.
I traded away a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th this year. Off the top of my head, I don't recall what picks I have in those 3 rounds, but last year at the trade deadline, I added a bunch of 2nds, 3rds, and 4ths, and then had a 3rd from a previous year. And then actually with the Chargers, I traded for a 3rd and 4th, and then the next day traded those away. So for me, I think whether I have 3 picks or 10 picks, I think it's still going to be me trying to stockpile as much talent as possible. Obviously, having more picks, it allows you to be, maybe take a chance here or there on a guy. Whereas, if I had 4 or 5, I would probably try to be more of, drafting more sure thing prospect.
Right.
But with, 9 or 8 early, day 1, day 2 picks, I think I can take, maybe a shot here or there. If I, scout a guy, he's got, really high rating, but not in one attribute, but maybe not as good in the others. It might be a lower overall. Like, I feel like I could maybe take a shot at that guy if I really, want him. Or if I scout a guy that's got like a 90 man coverage or 90 zone coverage, like I would probably just draft that guy to draft him and, just take a shot. But I think the biggest part is, for me, especially that first draft, I used all my scouting points like really early on just like random stuff. And then once I got into my 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, I was out of draft points to scout guys with. Maybe it was the second draft, where, this year I've scouted 3 guys who I'm looking at number 3, figure out who I'm going to pick there. And then once it gets to the second round, once I get close to my pick, I'm not going to end up spending scouting points on random guys who, go off the board late first round. I'm not going to scout them and say, oh, I hope, they're still here when my pick gets up. No, I'm going to have, a list of guys who I'm looking at for that second pick. And then when I'm 2-3 picks away, if they're still there, I'm going to start using those scouting points for those picks. So I'm going to base it off the, pick I have. And then hopefully, by the time we get to the 3rd or 4th round, I'll still have some guys who I've already previously scouted there. So then once I get, to near the end of the draft, I can just start shotgunning my points off just to see if there's anything still out there.
Right. So that kind of brings up 2 questions, because I remember last year you're like, hey, I still got scout points. Who do you want me to look at? I remember that conversation because I do the broadcast for the draft. And I remember that doing this, and it was kind of new having scout points.
Yeah.
I guess beforehand we didn't have it. We had to go off of whatever content people made in combines. And then now we have scout points. Are you seeing a correlation between what you're seeing in combine and those scouting points? Because I know some of us have looked at that kind of granular level, and there's a few people I know probably already have this information. I won't mention his name, Sage, probably has this information already. And, there's a couple of people that look at it that way. Are you seeing a correlation between combine and the interviews, because we're allowed 5 interviews of players, and the scouting points? Or are you seeing it still kind of disconnected?
Yeah, on the interviews, not really. I mean, I'm sure there was, but I didn't really look at the interview that much last year, because when we put in our interview selections or whatever it was, those guys were already gone by the time, it was all like number 1 overall, like potential guys. It's like when we drafted, they're already gone, but like it was a bad use of our interviews. But in terms of like the combine and those numbers versus what their attributes are, yeah, I think I do. Especially, last year and the year before, I was very in the middle rounds, O-line heavy. And I thought there was pretty strong, not always, but I thought there was a pretty strong correlation between like the bench press and their strength,
Right.
and especially like for the offensive linemen, because you could kind of tell that a little bit more than wide receiver or something like that, and then like speed. And so I think there was a little bit of similarities in the combine versus what you would see when you scouted the players. And I definitely did, especially in those later rounds. Like if there was still a guy who was, in the combine fifth in the bench press, like I would scout that guy and see what he looked like overall. Because like you said, I left 400 points left over once I was getting down to my last couple selections. So at that point, you kind of scout whoever you want. But I think the big reason why I had so many scout points last year was because I didn't scout Hiram, but I knew I needed a quarterback, and he was the quarterback. And I just,
he was the main.
looking back on it, I probably would have scouted him. And like, I don't know how bad he was at passing, but I still probably would have ended up taking him. Because I don't know if there was any, off the top of my head, I mean, I was so close-minded there. God, I don't know how many other quarterbacks were viable in the top 10 picks that were there. Because Hiram was the first quarterback. And I think it was very mixed. I think some people thought it was going to be good. Some people thought it was going to be terrible. Like I went back in Discord and like searched his name, and like Flynn was like, "No, I wouldn't touch this guy." Well, said, "Oh, like this guy's going to be good."
Yeah. Clip and I were, I think, two of the more vocal people about Hiram because it's like, dude's not good. Dude's not good. Dude's not good. Because I had fully scouted him just to see him. Like, because I had number one pick. Everyone's, oh, you're going to take the quarterback. You're going to do this. I'm like, no, I'm not going to touch that guy. And plus, he's from UCLA. I'm sure the hell not touching him. No, I'm sorry. As an Oregon Duck, I will never do it. No, I'm doing Cal as a recruit. I'm not taking a UCLA guy. I mean, Julian Long Anchor maybe, but I'm not going to have a chance at him.
That's funny. Yeah, so I don't know. Like if this quarterback drops 3 somehow, like if he drops past 1, I think 2 and 3 will both get a lot of messages saying, "Hey, we want to trade up." Like again, like if the Cardinals don't pick him, that's not good because he is I've fully scouted him already. He's the best player. Like I would be shocked if there's someone better. So he's the easy number 1 overall pick. If I was to trade up to number 3 or from 3 to 1, I would probably be willing to give up his first this year, probably like a 4th, and then a 1st next year. Like that's how good he is. He is He would instantly walk in and be a great starting quarterback. Not a quarterback, but if he's got weapons around him, he would be a playoff quarterback in year 1. Obviously, the Cardinals aren't going to have that, but he's really
right. So I get the second part of that question is you mentioned this idea of attributes and doing this, and several of us, like with us, we have the Wheels Off podcast rating the Whopper, and it's an algorithm designed based off of other sims, and just seeing how this has played out so far this year that gives me a rating is a little bit different than everybody else. Do you use an algorithm to kind of differentiate? You have 2 players that are A+, so let's say A+ overall. They both have similar stuff, but is there a way that helps you differentiate that, or you just go off the scout points?
I would probably go. So are you talking about draft?
Yeah, when you look, I look at the draft book. I've already got my draft book, my copy of the draft book, which I will never hand to somebody. Then I have a copy that I can hand to somebody because I have all my algorithms, and I'm constantly trying to find a way to differentiate a player. No, the number 3 player and the number 4 player are identical as you look across. Yeah, they may be different.
Yeah,
stuff, different positions, but offensive linemen, I tend to look for certain things over other things. A lot of pass off teams are going to look for more of maybe agility and pass blocking versus somebody who's trying to be more balanced. I want kind of a combination of things.
Right.
Strength is always a big thing for offensive linemen, in my opinion. Agility is big. Formation IQ, football IQ is huge to me. Do you have something that allows you that you just kind of go, here's what I'm looking for at this position? No, left tackle, I want this. Right tackle, no. Interior offensive line, I want that. Defensive line, I want this. Because as the Titans and as the Razorbacks now, there is a philosophy to how we play defense and we play offense. Does part of it is, does that philosophy and the algorithm kind of go together? Do you have an algorithm, and then how does it play in?
I think there are certain things, so like according to position, I don't have an algorithm. I need to have one probably, because I think those who do like kind of have an advantage, but I don't. Like in the draft book, when I'm in the later rounds, or I'm looking for guys specifically in the NFL, like I'll have my copy, and then I'll sort by who is at least an A minus, and the categories that I'm looking for. So for quarterback, obviously I want decent throwing, power and accuracy. Obviously, I don't have that right now in terms of having a 59 and 66. So, and I didn't scout him either. I just picked him. So that was probably the rash bad decision. But like the running back, I'm looking for speed. I don't really look at football IQ as much as some. I'm just looking for a couple core attributes and then building it around that. For me, I don't want to dive too much in the weeds doing that type of stuff, because then I'll actually never get the thing done.
Right.
So for me, like running back, strength or speed, depending on if I want to run outside or inside most of the time. And then wide receivers for me is catching. Like I look at a different combination for wide receivers, like catching, route running, speed, all that kind of stuff. I think everyone kind of puts more importance on one of those things based on what type of offense they're running. Obviously Sweezy puts more of a effort into getting speed guys. He wants to throw it deep. For me personally, in terms of the college, I'm looking for more route running and catching guys, because whichever quarterback I go to, like I'm not going to throw it deep that much, but if I can, just kind of bleed defenses to death with those short routes, high percentage throws, and get guys that can catch the ball at a high rate and run good routes. So that's kind of what I want. And plus I'm running West Coast too. So I'm looking for the best, catchers and route runners possible. Offensive linemen, I really only look at the run blocking attribute for NFL, just because I'm obviously a heavy run block team, or heavy run team. So I need a lot of run blockers, and then strength. And then defensively, my D ends, I look for pretty much only pass rush, D tackles, strength and tackle. And then my linebackers, I only really look at coverage and tackle and stuff. So, and then my quarterback and safety is pretty much coverage. I'm very simple at that kind of stuff. Like I don't really have like a formula, like I said, or an overarching thing that I look at. It's very basic, I'd say, especially on NFL. Like I want to do well, obviously, in the NFL. And I think this year I'm going to probably be decent, compared to years past. But I also don't really want to, try to completely flesh out two players, when in the end, there's probably a decent chance that they're going to be pretty much the same.
Right. So kind of go back to scheme for a second. You mentioned this, and not to cut you off, but you mentioned scheme a little bit more now than you did with the college side. Obviously, it seems like, and T. Suzy kind of touched on this a little bit too when his conversation was, how scheme may be more important on the pro side versus the college side. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it is fair. I think that in the college side, and two, I think coming from Weezy saying that, I think that might be a little like easy to say for him, just because he has so much talent on the offensive end of the ball, like offensive side of the ball. It doesn't really matter what he runs. He's going to be better than everyone else anyway.
Right.
Now there are schemes that would elevate his offense, and obviously like he's doing that because he's running as efficiently as possible. Obviously defensively he's not as good, but he's still better than 95% of the teams in the sim. So scheme for him probably doesn't matter in the way that it would matter for most people in college football. Like for me, I think scheme does still matter. I couldn't put my offense in like a spread offense and be good.
Right.
I think he could put his offense in any offense and be good. but yeah, I think it does matter because there's not as much. I don't think there's as much separation in NFL between the teams as there is college football. Like when I beat the Titans 2 years ago, like I wasn't even close to as good, but
Yeah, we're
I
not going
think
to
my
talk
scheme,
about that.
yeah, I think my scheme elevated it just a little bit.
Just a little,
And
just a
for
smidge.
me, that was, yeah, but also it goes back to me saying earlier, like I think scheme is more important on the defensive side of the ball than it is on
Right,
the offensive end of the ball because you can scheme better defensively without having talent versus offensively. Like if you don't have talent, you don't have talent, you're not going to be good. But
right,
defensively, my talent level was not good last year, and my defense was still pretty good. So yeah, I would say I agree. But going from T Sweezy, it doesn't matter what scheme you run, you're going to win every game anyway, pretty much.
right. So with that in mind, kind of same the idea, and yeah, and T Sweezy's built a great team, and
Mm-hmm.
Smackham
Yeah.
even at West Virginia has really taken that team and turned it around as well, based on the scheme that they run.
Mhm.
Do you think there's a meta to the scheme? Because right now, Titans reran West Coast last year with a really good field general quarterback, high intelligence, solid, mid 70s on everything else for his quarterback stuff, and we struggle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you think there is maybe more of a meta on the college side versus the pro side, or is it just kind of scheme wide? Is it sim wide on the football side?
I personally think it's probably as much as you can, which is not good for me because I run the ball a lot in the NFL. But I think the meta is definitely to throw it as much as you can. For example, like you look at, again, going back to Sleazy, he traded last year for Jerome Morrison from the Texans. Maybe it's 2 years ago now. He was terrible with the Texans. Again, I didn't have very good wide receivers at the time, and he was not very good. He was okay, but he wasn't very good. And it was something where I knew like the team as constructed wasn't going to be very good. So I moved on and traded to him. And then this year he goes out and, throws the ball over the field and looks pretty good doing it. And he, passes the ball deep quite a bit. So I think that's the meta. Obviously, year one with Purdue, I threw it deep all the time to McKinney, and my offensive stats were way better than, now throwing it short more often. I think back then again, I think it doesn't matter if you have talent too. Like it doesn't matter if you
Right,
have good talent. But I do think like you're saying the meta for both is probably throwing it deep. Getting as many speed wipes in there as possible and just throwing it up. Because even though you have less of a percent chance of completing one of those passes, when you do complete it, obviously it's going for a long game. So
right,
if I had good speed wide receivers and a good pocket quarterback, that's what I'd be doing every play.
right. So that kind of leans you towards, because obviously vertical seems to be the scheme right now that has an advantage. I know there's very few of us that ran West Coast, and growing up on the West Coast, watching Joe Montana, and Steve Young, and
Right.
Roger Craig, and Ronnie Lott, all those guys. Even though they're not my team now, that's who you're formed by. I mean, even Jim Zorn up in Seattle was not a deep ball thrower, we're growing up. So it comes down to scheme doing this because defensively, the counter we figured out real early at Tennessee was you blitz the living shit out of people. I mean, I was blitzing 90% of the time,
Yep.
even against your run team. I was in 4-4 and I'm run blitzing every
Right.
play.
Yeah.
And it took Ryan Johnson, whoever is like, oh, Ryan Johnson. I remember Ryan Johnson first year didn't do anything. First year running back. He was your first pick.
Mm-hmm.
John Knighton's out there, Mr. Ancient, no wheelchair guy, putting up 3,500 yards.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yep.
it's like, okay, the evolution of scheme and power did not fit very well. And they would work in a West Coast, but it didn't make sense. So
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah. And I think defensively, the scheme right now, like you said, and I know Sarge said it too, like it's blitz every time.
Yeah.
Last year at Purdue, I had every slide up to 100%, every slide up to aggressive. So I blitzed every single play, every play.
Mhm.
Didn't matter what it was, I was blitzing with 2 or 3 guys almost every play. At least I had it set to that. I think that should probably be nerfed because I would have led the league in sacks if Georgia wouldn't have that crazy game against Tennessee.
You're right.
Tackle got hurt, but I think that's some. I think it probably needs to be tuned down a little bit in terms of the sack percentage. But again, like if you're playing a 4-4 and you're blitzing 3 guys and you're sending 7, like I expect you to have 70 sacks a year, probably.
Right.
So,
Well, just going back to Jerry Glanville when he was the Atlanta coach, he's like, we live by the list. It's like driving a car 100 miles an hour. You hit a curve, you're either going to make it or you're not. So, I mean, obviously with the blitzing, you give up big plays, but at the same time, it seemed like it would probably be a balance on the offensive meta as well to maybe not just hurt one to keep the other. You maybe balance both would be a better feel for it.
Yeah, I
or
think you're
maybe
right there
allow
too.
more screens. Maybe more screens. His screens kill blitzing,
Yeah, blitzing
real quickly. You blitz, and you get burned.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, like one of the main reasons I blitz all the time is because, like I said last year, my defense, like overall, if you look just by overall rating across the board, like wasn't very good. So I also figured, like you said, like if I'm going to get beat, I might as well just try to, get beat in the most fun way possible and just blitz every single time.
Right.
Now for the NFL, I did not blitz as much, not as much as Purdue. Obviously my front 7 for Purdue was pretty good. I had the best linebacker room last year, in college football. I didn't blitz as much as Houston, but I've still noticed like having a good percentage of blitz like really affected, I thought, the games a little bit too, because if you get time of sticks after first down, just like in real life, you have to make two really good plays to get a first down.
Right.
Which if you're running 4 verts basically every play, like you're either gonna get sacked, thrown into pass, or have a completion for 30 yards. So that does kind of balance it out too.
Right. So I guess looking at that, then how do you approach game planning then? Do you prioritize offense play calling versus defense? How do you approach that at both levels?
Yeah. So for college football last year, my defense was better than my offense. So I really tried to fine tune my defense according to what type of offense and what team I was playing that week. So I would change and adjust some things. The only thing I didn't really like about the 4-4 was that I never had a right outside linebacker on the field. It was always my strong safety number 2.
Right.
So I had to swap my overall pass rush, maybe it was coverage on the right side, but I had to switch him to my backup strong safety, which hurt me because he would be taking a mouse or playing out of position.
Right.
But he was an A, so I had to get him on the field. So that was the only way that I was able to put 4 linebackers in the box, was to play one of them at strong safety too, which, depending on formation, would make him go out in coverage and just wasn't very good. So that was interesting. But yeah, so I would tinker with it every time, really every game on the defensive side of the ball. Again, just because I think that you can scheme more effectively defensively. Offensively, I pretty much left alone. I was pretty handcuffed with what I could do, really. I would change the side of the line that I would run to based off of the other team's defensive ends or defensive tackles. I had 3 wide receivers who were all my 1, 2, or 3, just because my wide receiver room wasn't really that good last year. Last year, even though I have 9 Bs this year, last year I only had 3 and then Cs. Like I wasn't able to mix and match guys based off the other teams, like cornerback depth chart. I did look at how good their safeties were, cornerbacks versus their linebackers and defensive line. Messed around with the pass percentage, run percentage, stuff like that. And the NFL, I just kind of left it like alone. Defensively, I would do the same. I would look at all the same stuff as I did on the college side. But offensively, for the Texans, it was kind of just, I knew I was going to run. I had to hitch my horse to the best player on my team, Ryan Johnson, and it didn't work. It didn't work. If it worked, it worked. So sometimes he would run for 60 yards, 70 yards, 80 yards. Sometimes he'd rush for 230, but I wasn't going to pass much more. So I didn't mess with it too much, besides flipping some offensive linemen here and there just to get better matchups on one side.
Right. I know on the Titans, when we played you both times last year, it's like, okay, Ryan Johnson's the only guy they got because Hiram did not scare me. I knew Hiram having scouted him. I knew the weapons were there. It's like, okay, 4-4 across the board. I didn't care what you ran. It was a 4-4 and I blitzed. And I believe I was one of the few teams that held him to like 60 or 70 yards both times. Just because I sold out to that knowing that there wasn't anything else out there to hurt you.
Yeah,
defensively.
it was really easy. It was really easy game plan against me too. I think this year I'll hopefully make it a little bit tougher because I'll obviously pass more than like last year I had passing set to I think 20%, which was the lowest, but he still ended up throwing like 35 passes a game. So I was down so much. So hopefully this year I can have him pass more efficiently, but also throw 20 to 25 passes a game, and not be forced into passing the ball because I'm down by 2 touchdowns.
Okay. So kind of with that idea, this philosophy, because we've talked a lot about, so this can be recruiting for any of the sports or free agency for either of the sports, pro, college, whatever. Is there any pick that you just, or a free agent, you just like, this was the best person I could have ever got. This is the best thing, or one that's like, gosh, I wish I could redo that. Like regret it almost.
Free agency, not really, just because, like I said, I've kind of stayed out of free agency this year. I will tell you that the Aerosmith guy, the center in the free agent pool, the 88 center, like I will be signing him. I don't care what I have to pay. I don't have a center currently in my roster. He's a great run blocker, great pass blocker. I'm going to sign him for as much money as I need to. In terms of like college football recruiting, and I also haven't signed any free agents in the NBA sim. A couple here and there, just the roster filler, just because I've had so many draft picks. So like all of my roster in NBA is guys I've drafted. College basketball is kind of the same. You last year, 2 years ago, when we had recruiting, I only had 3 spots, so it was really easy just to pick my 3 guys and go get them. I think both years I've had 2 5-stars and 4-star. This year I missed the first week of recruiting, but it's kind of funny because I'm still going to get the guys that I want. Not any 5-stars and 4-stars, besides my creative. I've got a couple 3-stars on my board that I think are going to be just as good for me as a 5-star would be, because they are good in the attributes that I covet in basketball sims. In terms of the college football sim, I think for me, I've had a lot of quarterbacks get out from under me. The overall 4-star guys who had good potential that I just lose the role for. Obviously, I got Laxo, but who knows how good he could be or is. He certainly wasn't good in the spring game last year. So maybe we'll see this year. Maybe we won't.
Right.
I think the favorite, honestly, for me, the favorite guys I've gotten recruiting is the 2 5-star defensive ends, and then the defensive tackle, who is a potential guy. So, that kind of sets me for the next 4 years for my, defensive line running up 3-4. But yeah, for me, I don't really miss much in recruiting because I recruit to not miss much. But the guys that I have missed on have been pretty hurtful in terms of positional need. I can't recruit a good quarterback, and who knows, again, Edward might be decent enough, but he's not going to be great. But I've also struck out on a lot of strong safeties until this year. I got lucky with one this year, but I've not been lucky. But those 3 defensive linemen are probably my favorite of all.
Right. Anybody you regret other than missing out? I mean, obviously missing players, we all miss players. I mean, Wisconsin, I was 0-13 in coin flips. I'm like, screw it, I'm going to Miami. Where I always was 50-50, after that. But it just, other than Hiram, it feels like Hiram, you feel, is kind of maybe a miss for your Texans. Is there any pro or college, anybody you kind of like, gosh, this was not smart?
As I said before, quarterback is the most important position of sim. And it was funny, I was thinking about it last week. I think after watching the pod video was like, wow, quarterback's the most important. Like, position in that sim, and I think I've missed on both of my big quarterback guys. On both, like I don't think Laxo. Again, we don't know yet because he hasn't played. I think he probably could be okay. So if I had anyone, that would probably be it. Because a lot of the time, I haven't played a lot of my recruits yet, just because I've had a lot of like 3-star or high potential guys who have developed, and I just haven't played them yet. So I would say probably the recruit that I've missed on would probably be the quarterback, because if you have a 5-star, like you expect them to start by his freshman year, or at least his sophomore year, be like, okay, yeah, this is my guy. Like his throwing stats are C or B accuracy, and Cal Gaines are both A's. So it's really hard not to play that guy. And if you're a 5-star guy not starting as a sophomore, like, he just might not be very good.
Right. I guess that kind of goes back to, like you said, your philosophy and how you do this. Is that also part of it? Because kind of some of the aspects from your real life is like, hey, this guy should be at this level in the college. You know, he's 5-star, he should be playing. Or, I mean, it goes back to I guess the real question is, how much do you look at the potential versus overall? Is that playing in? Or are you more of like an attributes driven guy, kind of like I am? Does it matter? I mean, is it scheme right? I mean, how does this all just tie in? And is there any part of your real life that you bring into this that says, hey, here's how I'm going to look at these players?
Yeah, I think if you recruit a 5-star, you expect them to be pretty good. Just like in real life, like if you have a 5-star kid, he's ranked number 10 in the country, you know, you expect them to go wherever they go, you know, whether that's townhouse like, you know, South Carolina or UConn on the women's side, like you expect them to be good there. So yeah, I think the expectation coming in was thought Laxo was going to be a good quarterback. But going to potential, he's not a very good potential guy. I think he's a C minus. So I do look at that. But like I said earlier, I play more talent. I'll make some decisions based on the age. So like that first year, or 2 years ago when I had Spear and Galvin there as 5-stars, the defensive end position, I also had 2 B overall, a junior and a senior defensive end. And the decision there was, okay, do I play these 5-stars over them, but then take a year off of their, you know, lifespan where I could redshirt them, play guys who were similar, and then get, you know, a little bit of progression in the redshirt year, and then have 4 years to go. So I decided to redshirt them, just because I thought that playing them over 2 other B overalls at defensive end would kind of be a waste of those guys, because you don't need 4 B overall defensive ends when 2 of them aren't playing, 2 of them are already redshirted.
Right.
But like this year, you know, I'll have a couple decisions to make, and I think it's pretty much, I'm going to be playing the younger guys more this year. If there's I have a B overall outside linebacker who's like a junior, and then I have a B redshirt freshman. I think the junior is probably better at wise, but because the freshman is pretty much on the same plane, and he's redshirt already, like I'm going to go with that guy just because now he gets 3 years of starters progression versus, you know, 2 years of backup progressions and then 2 years of, you know, starter progressions. But with a 4-4 or 3-4, like I said, the right outside linebacker is never on the field anyway. So like my thought process is, well, maybe I put him at the right outside linebacker. He's never going to see the field anyway. You know, I think my right outside linebacker last year, before I moved him to strong safety number 2, and the guy who I moved in to that right outside linebacker role only saw the field in 4 total games last year out of 12. That position only played 4 games. So my thought process is, okay, maybe I put that freshman at right outside linebacker, so it's technically a starter.
Right.
But, you know, he won't play that much on the field, but still get those starter progressions now. So, yeah, I think I look at the overall picture, how competitive I'm going to be that year. They're, you know, who I have behind them, who I have in front of them in terms of, you know, what year in school they're in. Because I do lean more short-term results than long-term results. I lean long-term in recruiting, but then in who I play, I think I lean more short-term. Unless it's tied, then I'll lean more long-term.
Okay. So how has the portal changed things? for both your college basketball and college football for you? Is it affecting maybe how you decide who plays and who doesn't, or who recruits? Or, I mean, because now we can cut players too on the football side. Is that affecting how you look at things and approach it?
Yeah, I think it is. College basketball, no, I did not go in the portal this year, but I had the full 15, so I couldn't. But that's something I'll utilize in the future if it's a fit. Like, I'm very big on fit in the basketball sims,
Mm-hmm.
probably more so than the football sims. So in basketball, I'll definitely go for my core attributes that I covet the most. And if there's a guy that fits that and I have a spot, I'll take him. Um, in football, I think it's just still like collecting as much talent as possible. Like for me, I've been, like I said earlier, very vocal in the Discord, just with how happy I've been with transforming both my wide receiver rooms and my quarterback rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And they're good, but they're still not to where I want them to be. So I actually still went out and in the portal tried to get cornerbacks and wide receivers, just to elevate that room a little bit more.
Right.
And actually, I got the two best quarterbacks, zone covered guys in the portal. So now I have like a true number one on this guy and a true number two who's a junior B plus.
Right.
Obviously, now some of those cornerbacks below him are going to transfer, but I kind of expected that anyway because got like 9 blue chips in that room.
Okay.
But for me, like it elevates my cornerback room this year. So like that's what I'm looking for through the portal. Same with the wide receiver room. I had a guy who was probably going to be a decent number one wide receiver, but I had the ability to go get a guy who's, like I
Right.
said earlier, really good at catching. So it has changed in some ways. I think college basketball, I haven't seen it yet. But like I said, if there's someone there that I have room for and fits my roster construction how I want it to be, like I'll have no problem going and getting that guy. And then college football, I think, yeah, it's a lot of just filling gaps. I also got a defensive tackle and I only had 2 defensive tackles on my roster. So that's a spot where I needed depth and I was able to get it. As a sophomore too, I was just a redshirt sophomore. So that's
Right.
now a position where I'm not really going to have to focus on the next 3 years. I'll have to bring someone in, but it's not going to be like something that I'm going to say, okay, the next recruiting cycle, like I have to get in this cycle. That's not how it's going to be.
Right.
So that aspect of the transfer portal I like. And I like it too because for example, I look at Abe, who's done a really good job with Northern Illinois with the resources that he has there, coming in like mid-year last year and not having a full recruiting class to go through and obviously not having a good roster. He's able to use the portal now to
Mm-hmm.
elevate his roster in certain positions. But for him, he's, besides running back, he's going for every single position in the portal. And for me, being someone who has a lot of talent, I'm able to let players go that other people probably wouldn't let go. Like I let 12 B minuses or B's go to the portal this year. They would never play for me. I obviously have a lot of B's on the roster. I don't have a lot of top end talent, but I just have a lot of like mid end talent right now. But if the 5th quarterback on my depth chart, my 4th running back, or I had 4 outside linebackers go in the portal. Like if I'm not going to play him and they can go help someone that needs them in the portal, like my philosophy is just let them go. Like they're never
Right.
going to play for me. Like why do? Like I don't want to sit here and hoard talent. Like yeah, it's going to make my team look worse in the 2 talent rankings. But I don't. If they're not going to play for me, I don't see the reason to keep them. Like let someone like Abe or whoever doesn't have a great roster, bring those guys in and let them play. And for me, like that would be more fun. Like the Reinhardt blue chip guy that as wide receiver that transferred for me. Like he's never going to play for me if he's a
Right.
sophomore. But he has the ability to be really good because he had good potential. Already be overall, I recruited him to be, so he's probably a high B. But like red zone threats aren't going to see my depth chart no matter what. So like, why
Right.
not let him? Like it's going to make my roster look worse, but it's going to help someone else.
Right. Kind of looking at that idea then, when you construct your rosters for the college or even the pro sem, are you modeling them kind of off of a philosophy or a team in real life? Or you just kind of here's looking at this and going, okay, this would fit this person based off of what I see schemes? I mean, do you look at like, oh, I'm going to build this off of like a Bo Schembech type football team, or a more of a, Drew Brees when he was at Purdue type team. I mean, or how do you kind of approach that? Do you look at that type of stuff when you construct your teams, or is it just like whatever comes up?
Yeah, I think a little bit. For me, I've always been offensively, and I think I kind of try to mold toward this scheme in both football and NFL. Obviously, your scheme that you're going to play is more predicated on who you have a quarterback. Because as a scrambler, like even though if I want to run spreads, like can't run spread. As a field journal, like if I want to run spread, can't really run spread. Yeah, I can't really run some offenses just because of the quarterback that I have. But definitely defensively, I think I model it more based on. So when I got to college, my Division III school was really good at football. Their front seven was incredible. They only allowed in the 2015 season, they only had 12 rushing yards a game, and they would just blitz and blitz and blitz. So I think I kind of have shown that in my blitzing in college football and the NFL. But I'm also looking for guys who can get the passer, speed guys, and then on my back
Right.
four, I'm looking for coverage guys because those guys were really good at coverage. And then the front seven, whether that was 3-4, 5-2, 4-4, they kind of ran everything. We're all all over the football. They had it was fun to watch because if one guy hit the running back, 2 seconds later there'd be 6 guys on the running back. So like that tough, swarming type defense, I think that's kind of what I want to model towards. And it's a little tougher too in the NFL because I'm trying to get more coverage linebackers because people just pass it more and they're not as run heavy. But in college, I'm definitely looking to, get that front seven where I can cover guys, but also rush the passer for my linebacking positions, get some speed guys in there who can cover sideline to sideline, and then just recruit as well as I can the defensive backfield and let them kind of be on an island per se on their own. So yeah, I think real life there's definitely some defensively, especially that come into fruition there. Offensively, not as much. I haven't really been like a huge fan of like. I mean, I enjoy watching the air raid, but it's not something where I'm like, okay, I gotta pass the ball as much as Mike Leake pass it, or Navy running the triple option. Like, I gotta run the ball. It's more of okay, this is the running back and quarterback I have. This is what I can do with it. And then same with the NFL. Like if I had a really good pocket passer, I'd probably throw it 70% of the time, but I don't. If I had a good pocket passer in college, I would probably throw it more than 50-50. If I had a scrambler, I'd probably run it like I did 2 years ago. Run it 75% of the time in college too. So I think offensively, I definitely kind of mold to what talent I have quarterback.
Okay. So does the sim allow you to really build towards that? I mean, obviously the idea of a swarming defense, intelligent players, but does the sim really allow that to happen or simulate that well enough?
Maybe. I don't think it probably has it as strictly swarming as you probably want, or I would envision it to be in terms of the scheme. However, with the play to run, play to pass, split percentages, I think you can kind of work towards that. I don't think there's a defense that like says, oh, here you can have, pass rush, speed rush guys on the defensive line, and then speed linebackers, and then pass rush outside linebackers. Like that's what a swarming defense, pressure quarterback would be. I don't think there's a scheme that gives a bonus for all that. But again, what I like, even with that, like, I know we talked about it too when the new schemes first came out. Like, I don't want them to overdo it because that first year for me, especially, like, schemes were really confusing. Like, I didn't know what to do, how to do it. Obviously, I've gotten more used to it now that I've seen it for over a year, but I don't want it to evolve extreme amount just because I know new guys coming in probably would get very overwhelmed. And if I was a new guy coming in, I would just feel like this is too much. I'm not doing this. Especially when, there's college football 25 now. Like go do that. I think it's a good balance though.
Right. I'm going to go back to a comment you made almost a year and a half ago. It's actually written down here. It was a big discussion. I think there was like 7 or 8 of us in this discussion. We were all because it's like some of us, I got almost 30 years of college, high school and junior high football. And I was like, okay, there's certain things I would like to see adapted. I mean, to me, one of the things I think would be really good was being able to put in like a weekly training plan. Like we put in a number of minutes on this, X number of minutes on this position group. Obviously, offensive linemen, I want them blocking and strength. Receivers, I want them a jugs machine and catching. So it would seem like there would be an ability to do this. And a comment you made was sometimes there's just not enough.
Wow.
Yeah, I told you, I went back and looked before we started this. I told you, I have all the conversations from the old sim on a doc. I have conversations from Discord, and I go look at this stuff. It's like, what would be the one thing you would want to either add? I guess we'll put it this way. What's the one thing you would want to add? And what's the one thing you would like to maybe change or eliminate in the sim? Doesn't matter. Football, basketball, baseball, doesn't matter. Because I know baseball is new, so.
So for me, in terms of future, I think for basketball specifically, I think there can be a little bit more. I think it could be a little bit deeper. But again, like I always go back to, don't want to put too much on the plate of the admin to do this. Like code all that. Like I think the game planning could be a little bit deeper in terms of being able to, really say, okay, this is how the line is going to look, rather than just, because at this point, you can say your point guard would play point guard or shooting guard, but you can't really say, okay, if he's a shooting guard, then if you have 3 other guys who have point guard minutes, you can't say, okay, this guy's now point guard. Like I would like the ability to, like if you've done or anyone's done the NBA 2K League, you can set your rotation. Like you can tell it who exactly is on the floor and when. You can set those minutes. And the sim for basketball, it's just like, okay, here's some minutes. Here's how it's going to go. Like you don't, like if I have a bad ball handling point guard out there, maybe I want my shooting guard who's a good ball handling guard to get minutes at that time, to kind of offset it. Versus now, you could have 2 good ball handling guards at the guard positions, or you could have 2 bad ball handling guards. So I think that would be neat to be able to do. Basketball sim specific, and this is just something that I've had in my mind, and this is not like on our end at all. Like I don't see the need for the international team for the foreign teams. Like it's a cool dressing and all that stuff, but like I think that just provides more work than is needed. Like I think the NBA teams are fine, but I don't know if we need like a European league or whatever league it is. Because that's another 50 teams or whatever it is. Takes up more memory, takes up more space, takes up more work on the admin side to work on. And for us, like all it is for like some draft stuff. Football wise though, like I did say back then, we don't have this space or whatever the quote was. What was the quote?
You said we could do more.
Yeah. So, we could have done more and we did more, but I think it might have been just a little bit confusing when you weren't right on the up and ups with it. Like, I think everyone was kind of confused. Like, I think even you, at the very early onset were like, this is just kind of maybe a little too much.
I think the conversation I'm trying to, because I don't have it pulled up here. I just have the comment. Yeah, there was a lot of it. It's like some of it, like I come from a sim, JW, and I come from a sim call. And I think there's a couple other guys that came from What If Sports, where we played Gridiron Dynasty and Hardball and Hardcore, the basketball sims, college stuff. And we're used to seeing different things, like formation wise. I think for me, I was looking at formations. I like to be able to put on the college side specifically, if I have a quarterback that's young, I want to put him in a formation that I only run the ball out of.
Yeah.
But also have a passing version of that same formation that my better passer would come in and play. So that way I'm getting, younger players playing time without sacrificing my team every play to do it.
Yeah.
And I think
So
that was where the conversation where we could do more on that side. And I know the admins do a great job. This is a thing of passion that they do on their own, and I love everything they do for it. Between Rocket and Tuscan and Alex and everybody that's involved in the sim does a lot and puts their time into it. The question is I know new people come in, maybe okay, it's too much. I've come into some sims where we didn't have this community when I joined What If Sports. If you didn't know the meta, you were screwed.
right.
And it takes you a long time to learn that. We didn't have the community. So I think there's some built-in advantages, but the question is, what is the one thing we could add or take away? I mean, one thing you would add, one thing you could either change or take away that would really affect maybe the playability or the enjoyment or the community, whatever. It doesn't just have to be like, fix this thing. To me, on the basketball side, having the ability to save my freaking draft of my plan as I'm trying to figure out all these minutes and percentages would be really nice versus having to redo it every time something happens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think, so football specifically, I think it would be more fun to have more teams. But again, I also go back to I also don't want to overburden or tax the guys who are doing it, because I want it to be fun for them too. I don't want it to seem like another job, which I'd be shocked if it doesn't for a lot of those guys when they're doing this. So for me, I think more teams would be fun. Again, like I mentioned earlier, there's certain things I want to run, but I can't in terms of, the speed, pass rush, defense, because there's no team out there that really does that. And then take away, I don't know if I would necessarily take away anything. I think it would be nice. I'm going to say something else that I'd like to add. I think it'd be nice to see and be able to scout talent prospects before you recruit them, to know kind of what's under the hood a little bit more, rather than it. I mean, it's really just a blind dart at this point. You look at their archetype, you look at their overall, you look at their potential. But obviously, C overall could mean many, many different things. The B overall can mean many, many different things. It could be a C overall with all C's once they're generated. It could be a C overall with, I've seen them with all D's when they're generated. I don't know if I'd necessarily take anything away. Just little additions, but again, I think less is more in terms of
maybe take away the international stuff. So I think the international, the way I would look at it, would be a great way to test a lot of things without affecting the main game. But it does take away from bandwidth. And coming from a different sims where having the ability to look at a player, hey, you can send an assistant coach or the head coach to go scout somebody because they're going to look at things a little bit different. Assistant coach, hey, really good on the great pancake blocks, this, a little slow on the foot speed, maybe. You could little things would make sense because, like you said, right now it is, oh, he looks good. He's an A, he's a 5-star, click. You don't know what that is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I talked a little bit with Birdman about making the transfer portal a little bit more dynamic. In terms of, and it goes back to our conversation that we talked about an hour ago, making those personalities and stuff like that a little bit more dynamic and the biases. Instead of allowing everyone to recruit everyone, I think in the transfer portal, kind of like we see on, the new college football game, maybe someone wants to go to the portal and go to the winner. Maybe we look at their personality bias and, if they want to play for a winner, only teams who won 7 games or more the year before can recruit that player. Maybe he wants to be a starter. So if he's a B overall, no one with a B overall or better at that position can recruit that guy. Maybe if he wants to help turn a program around, no one who, and he's an A overall quarterback or something, maybe now no one with more than, or 6 wins or didn't get to a bowl game the previous year can recruit. So that's something I kind of belong to Birdman about it. I don't know. And he seemed pretty agreeable with it. I think it makes sense. I go back to he's Sweezy. He didn't need Patman as a third quarterback. He could have put someone in there. He didn't need to get a guy that should be starting somewhere like that guy. left Georgia to go start, not be a third quarterback to go SEC rival.
Right.
So that's kind of where that whole conversation, kind of stemmed from, and just my thought of, okay, well, maybe we make it so that, these guys are going to places where they're going to make an impact, and maybe they just want to go to a big school, and then only schools with 40,000 or more capacity can recruit them, or a small school, anything under 40,000 can recruit them, stuff like that. So I think
Okay.
that's absolutely one of the things that some is most interested to add.
Okay. So I got one more question before I do the question that was left from T. Sweezy for you. And I asked him this question too, and this is, he won the national title with Tennessee. So, but what is kind of your ultimate goal, both with Purdue and Houston and even OKC? I know because you and I rival each other between the Jazz and OKC all the time.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of a nice little fun rivalry. I mean, what's kind of your ultimate goal?
Yeah. Actually, after you asked him that, I thought about it too. For me at college football, like you said, I think, we're inherently wanting to win every game. I understand that where I'm at, my team right now at Purdue is not going to be like a national championship contender because I don't have the quarterback again. It all goes back to the quarterback. I don't have all the really good teams that you see in the Final Four of the playoffs every year have a quarterback. But I think my ultimate goal, it's such a low baseline too. I want to compete in the Big Ten. I want to get to the playoffs. That's my goal. Once I get to the playoffs, who cares? I think it'd just be fun to win 8, 9, 10, 11 games a year. If I can somehow finagle my way into a Final Four or a national championship game, then cool. But I'm not. If I meet my preseason goal, my expectations of the team, like I did last year, I said I'm going to win maybe 8 games, and I think I won 9-4 last year, or 8-5 last year. I think that's fine. But my ultimate goal is just to my ultimate goal overall is just have fun, just enjoy it.
Right.
And then for college basketball, I mean, my team is better. They're obviously, I think, a little bit more competitive basketball wise, but I think that just inherently comes from me looking in basketball. I'm around it all the time. My team's obviously much better there. I won national championship 2 years ago. I was runner up last year. For me, if I don't get to the Final Four, it's a failure, especially with how my roster is constructed. It's young and it's really good too. I think with players declaring early, that's going to be a difference maker because I have a couple of guys who are sophomores or freshmen who I'm really expecting to be good for me the next 2 years. But if they go to the draft, then kind of messes up a little bit. But I think I have a decent thing going there just with kind of how I recruit too, because I ranked all of the recruits in the whole recruit list, and the 3 stars that I'm on right now, I had a top 20 prospects in the whole pool in terms of what I look at, and I'm not being tested on any of them. I've got 30 plus points in all 3 of them. So even though they're 3 stars, I'll redshirt them and they'll be there for 4 years. So those are 3 guys who I can count on being there. In terms of NBA, I don't know. I would like to be able to be consistent with winning games. I think the meta is obviously a little messed up right now, where it's switched back and forth a little bit in terms of shooting threes and inside scoring and all that. But for me, whether win or lose, it's fun for me because I have built my team through the draft. Obviously, I've had a lot of draft picks the last 2 years. But it's just fun to see how, that kind of flows and the ebbs and flows of that whole aspect. I feel like I get a talented player pretty easily. I'm always this far. I'm going to sign, I would do whatever I can to keep him. And, my goal for him is to be the all-time Sim NBA scoring leader. Last year at Purdue with Pedro Rodriguez, my goal was, really it was to win a national championship, and the Big Ten, but it was also, hey, I want Pedro Rodriguez to be college player of the year. I gave him as many opportunities as I could. Same with Boy This Far. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to try for something, I wasn't good enough to win the finals or anything. So I want this guy to win MVP. And he won MVP. In football, in NFL specifically, I think it's a little bit different where I'm not as good as some people in terms of scouting, not as savvy with players.
Right.
I'm not as savvy money wise. So for me, like, I just want to build a competitive team, really, in the NFL. That's my goal. Make the playoffs here or there. Figure out, and just be as good as possible without really any expectation. Like if I win 4 games, then I win 4 games. If I win 10 games, make the playoffs. I win 10 games and make the playoffs.
Right.
I don't want to. I'm not gonna ever overtly tank. Like last year, I probably could have, or the year before, I probably could have. But like for me, I would rather just win game. Like I could have probably got the number 1 overall pick when I had number 8. I probably could have got the number 1 overall pick this year, but I didn't want to tank. I just wanted to win as many games as possible.
Right. And definitely I can see, and I've enjoyed it because as the Titans owner, my whole thing is the very first game of the sim we ever played, I lose in overtime to the Jags. And all you hear for that year and every year since, all I care about is beating the Jags. Because I know if I beat them, I win the division. And winning the division gets me in the playoffs. I don't care after that. I go back to my old high school football coach was win the conference and then just get in the playoffs and see what happens. It was just, you got to win the conference. And over his 40 years, I think it was only probably 7 or 8 years he didn't win the conference.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's like, that mentality of I want to compete and I love Ricky. He's a great guy, but I'm going to beat the Jags every year. That's my whole goal. If I don't beat the Jags, it's a bad season.
Yeah.
And then on the college side now, I'm taking a rebuild. I'm going to try something different. Wisconsin was good. I mean, you and I had some great games on the basketball side, Wisconsin and Purdue. Because I remember you're like, God, I hope I beat you. And I'm like, God, I hope I find a way to beat you. It translates over to Oklahoma and the Utah Jazz as well. I was like, got it. First time you beat me, like, I beat you. And then you didn't win after that against it.
I know.
And it's like, okay, because I figured out, okay, here's how because my whole goal is to beat OKC. And right now, this year is like, okay, I got to figure out how to beat freaking Denver because I cannot beat Denver.
Yeah.
I think I beat them once in 2 years. How do I beat them? But that's everybody's doing the same thing. There's that thing.
Yeah. It is really interesting too, like game planning wise on the basketball side, you're like everyone's philosophies, like you saying, kind of have to game plan specifically for these teams. For me, like my philosophy game planning wise on the basketball side is like, I don't even look at the other team. Like I could care less who I'm playing. Like maybe I should, especially at the NBA level, but like I want to do what my team is going to be good at. Like I want to make my team elevate my team as much as possible, and whatever happens.
Exactly.
I do that with Purdue really well. I probably should look at the opposing teams more in the NBA. But yeah, it's always interesting to hear different like game planning philosophies and stuff like that.
Yeah, my thing is I don't even really. I mean, I set my team. It's like Utah, and we're pick and roll. That's what we're going to play man to man, and you're going to have to beat us inside. I got bigs that can play. Because draft wise, you and I draft very similar, our basketball teams. Like, I'm going to find people that can play multiple positions that aren't just stuck in one. I mean, obviously, Babcock being at 5 was, you kind of have to take him, and he's showing that he's going to be good. It's just, I have to have small forwards. I have to have shooting guards. I have to have power forwards because they can play multiple positions.
Right.
And it gives me the flexibility. Beating Denver, beating you is not so much a game plan for them as like, I've tried to construct my team to compete with you guys.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think like you said, we hold kind of the same recruiting / team construction philosophies on the basketball side, definitely in terms of positional versatility. Like I think I've got 7 or 8 power forwards on my team in NBA, but like I don't care if they could play through position. So I get 4
so
or
you
5
got power
shooting
forwards.
guards.
I got shooting guards.
Right.
You get power forwards. I got shooting guards.
Yeah, you're reverse. You're the reverse. I got to play big because all my guys are big.
Yeah, well, I have bigs. It's just my bigs are good. I need to find a different flexibility point. I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, so we have a tradition on this podcast. The previous guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they are. So, T Sweezy came up with this one, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. You kind of talked about this a little bit when we were talking about philosophy, but it's kind of hard because it's like my goal with this podcast is eventually move into other sims that I play with other people, other humans.
Yeah.
So like we say, we talk real sports with real people about fake sports.
Yeah.
And I want to know, because I'm in like simulation football league, I'm in what if sports, I have out of the park baseball, I have a couple other things I do, and even maybe get into other things like tabletop gaming, and just get different people from different communities involved through my Discord in here. But his question is, and kind of take a second to think about this, is how do you pick who your favorite players are and how important are they in your team? Whether it's picking them for gameplay, picking them for content. I mean, David Ross obviously is the meme that's been around forever. Savage is kind of almost a meme now, even though he's a great player and a Heisman winner and a national title winner. How do you pick who that person is? And then is it for a content or is it more of a gameplay thought process?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more of a gameplay process because I don't really have any meme players like David Ross. It is Edward, and I kind of dubbed him Helen Keller because he was 9 for 51 or whatever it was in that spring game. So he's kind of a meme to me, and I always just call him Helen. And if he sucks this year, then he'll definitely, like, if I play him and then bench him or something, or bring him in sometime, he's terrible. Like, he would probably be a meme. So that would be fun to run with, I think. And Sweezy will make fun of me all the time for it. But like, it's easy on the Texans. Like, my guy's Ryan Johnson. Like, I'm going to run him to death. NBA, it's far one of the best players in the sim. So I've had stud players on both of my professional teams that it's easy to kind of generate around just because, I'm obviously using them at a high rate and they're really good. And so it's always easier, I think, to write about guys who are really good than mean guys, more so because just from personally my background of sports writing and stuff, you're kind of writing about the guys who are good and girls who are good rather than, making up a story. I'm not a very good writer or anything. So making up a story about like a mean guy would be harder to me than making up a story or, circumventing content around a good player that I have. So definitely Ryan Johnson for the Texans. Again, going back to Farr, like, I want Farr to be the leading scorer. I want, by the end, Ryan Johnson's career to have the record for most rushing yards in the stud. And so those two guys are easy to circle around. And then obviously Pedro Rodriguez was the player of the year last year. So even though I haven't had as good teams, it's really easy when you have I've had a stud on every team. Devontae McKinney with Purdue, football, Pedro Rodriguez, basketball, and obviously Ryan and Bar. So that's probably who I kind of spin my wheels on per se.
So your way of choosing them is basically who is your stud and who leans into the identity that you're trying to create.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for taking 2 hours out of your day to talk to me.
I know we didn't even talk about recruiting either.
No, we did indirectly, kind of about recruiting. And
I was ready to go into that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to it. And obviously recruiting is a big thing. But we're kind of in the middle of it right now, specifically with basketball and with the portal stuff on the football. So it's like, I don't want to give away too many things. And you and I have plenty of conversations on recruiting as it is. And I think you probably do with everybody because you're very open in the Discord about that. But I want to thank you for doing this. And once again, for everybody listening or watching this, please click the like and subscribe. Type some nice constructive comments on the YouTube for the algorithm to help us, because like I said, I am growing this. Already got the next basically month and a half lined up with people to go on this, so it's going to be a little bit more regular basis now that I have a consistent work schedule and I've survived 2 weeks of vacation of nothing but sleeping to recover from work. Very physical work, so it's like I was exhausted, but I appreciate it. And we'll do this. And for everybody, once again, thanks for watching the Wheels Off podcast. This has been a behind the clipboard conversation with Baba Yaga.
Thank you.